Hi, and welcome to Color Your Home Happy. I'm Justine, founder and creative mind behind Rainbow Shaker, a colorful interior design studio in London. My goal is to spread joy and happiness through the design of cheerful interiors. If, like me, you think that we need a colorful bubble to escape the daily gloom, then this podcast is definitely for you. Each episode, I will be welcoming well-known guests from various colorful backgrounds. You won't find us speaking about the right way to use colors. In this podcast, I want to help you trust your intuition and give you all the confidence you need when designing interiors full of dopamine. Welcome everyone to another episode of Color Your Home Happy. Today we're going to talk about shapes and colors with the lovely Molly Hawkins, a mural artist coming all the way from Bristol, working under the name of Molly Mural. She creates joyful, vibrant mural for homes, commercial purposes. So can't wait to dive right in. Hi Molly, how are you?
Good, thanks. It's really nice to be here.
Thank you for being here. And right now we're working on a mural for me. I can't wait. So can you tell us a bit about your journey into...
the world of big shapes and colour.
Yeah.
I think I really enjoy what I do, making like huge murals, public art installations. And I think I've kind of transformed at different stages. I think since I started my professional career as a freelance artist, I started by doing set and costume design. And so I did a lot of that for touring theatre companies, which is kind of what drew me to Bristol because there was loads of really great theatres there. And when I landed in Bristol, I also then noticed the abundance of street art and how much people just seemingly loved colour and making their environments really epic and really made an impact. And then kind of naturally slowly started to fall into the realm of creating these big murals. And with the help of Upfest, who are the Europe's largest street art festival, they kind of helped me. I suppose they gave me platforms where I could start to experiment. And then from there, I think maybe people started to notice the work I did, and maybe it kind of was different in a way to what you normally see around kind of, I guess, the block colours, the kind of cut out Matisse, pop arty, vibrant shapes is very impactful on buildings. And then in the pandemic, I noticed a really huge importance for making spaces feel more positive. And a lot of people were getting in touch with me during that period to kind of transform their outdoor spaces. It looked a bit sad because obviously there was that time when we were all building fun little places outside cafes to hang out, and there was a lot of sad walls that just wanted a little bit of love. And so since then it's just been a really exciting, flurrying journey of creating lots and lots of more murals and having a really great, colourful time.
You really think that mural can also create an emotional connection?
Yeah, for sure. I think I've always said for me, something about really colourful spaces makes me feel really safe. And I don't know why, because some people are kind of afraid to wear colours. But there's something for me when I see people wearing colourful clothes, I just feel happy and safe and kind of there's this connection with them. And you're like, what is this? Colourful connection. And I think with the colours I use, it's kind of quite intuitive and kind of comes from my soul in a way. And it's always the kind of bright corally pinks and the blues and bright oranges and yellows that just make me just feel so happy and joyful.
Have you always felt drawn to bold colors, or is it through trips abroad? Or
I think when I first kind of started experimenting with murals about 5 years ago, I used to play it safe and always use pastel colours. And then I think one day, I can't remember what happened. I think it was when I went to Mexico with a partner maybe it was 4 years ago. And it was just seeing all the colours and just the way they kind of celebrated colour in such a different way and were so bold with the colour choices that they put together. And all the folk art really inspired me. And I have always been really inspired by travel. I've been lucky to do different projects abroad over the years, kind of within the theatre projects I used to do. So also went to India, did a kind of giant puppet project there years ago. And definitely all of these trips have infused my love and curiosity with putting colours together.
Yeah, India and Mexico have such a way to use bold colors that is completely different than here or in Europe. And it's just so joyful, so vibrant.
Yeah. And the buildings, I mean, Bristol's great because it does appreciate having colourful houses. I think in Mexico, yeah, it's just so glorious.
And you also traveled to Berlin?
Yeah, it was a couple of years back. I got the DYCP grant from the Arts Council, which is to kind of help develop your practice. And part of that, I really wanted to kind of grow international connections a bit more, and found a residency with a place called Officina in Berlin, and spent a couple of months there creating new work and experimenting with textiles, and at the end had a little exhibition. I just find being in other cultures and kind of creating art is very interesting because your work's received so differently, and all the inspirations, the tools and everything is such a different process to what you kind of get familiar with in your hometown. But it was a really eye-opening experience, and I met really wonderful people. And I think because it's such a hub of international artists, you kind of just constantly getting loads of new inspiration, and it's really, really great.
You not only take inspiration from people, from travel, but also from your other passion.
Yeah, for sure. I think there's a huge part of me that still loves theatre, the live performance. You know, I love exploring costumes and like even the things I make for myself. Love sewing. It's kind of my therapeutic practice. Yeah, just like making clothes and costumes and stuff is still a huge part of what I do. But I'm at the point now where I'm interested in trying to merge these worlds together. And so looking at ways that you can make live performance and murals and public art interaction this one big, lovely
intersection.
Yeah.
All new worlds,
yes.
Molly worlds.
Bigger worlds, three-dimensional worlds.
Do you think that murals can really boost a home? Because we always think about putting a wall into one color or two or three, but murals with shapes, it's
yeah. It's interesting because I think most people think it probably makes a space feel smaller, but quite often it makes a space feel bigger in an interesting way. And I think what I always try to do with my murals is create this kind of ongoing weaving design that kind of keeps your eye exploring. So when you have a piece in a home, maybe in like an alcove or as we're doing here on the roof, it kind of creates this sense of flow, which I guess we do naturally sometimes with our homes, but it's just interesting how a mural adds that extra element of
pizzazz.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you see mural on walls or on flooring, but we sometimes don't think about looking up.
Yeah. Yes. No, it's interesting. I mean, so I've come here to make this mural on the roof, and it's a really great process. And I was thinking, though, I've never seen anyone do it, I think, on a roof. I guess because it's quite hard, but luckily your roof's not miles away. Yeah, I think it's made a really great impact. And I do really enjoy painting on floors as well. But yeah, interesting to think about where else a mural could go. A roof isn't always the first one you think of.
Yeah, on the neck it's really hard.
Neck breaks. I have to keep taking neck breaks. Yeah. So we keep looking up and everyone's going to be like, what are they looking?
I'm really happy that we did this mural because like for so long I was looking at this blend solving and I was just, it needs something more. It needs something.
As we know, more is more.
Yeah. And in your projects, have you always noticed like a before and after with your clients after you've completed the project? They always have like a different emotion.
Yeah, for sure. I suppose it's quite shocking how quickly the transformation can happen. So obviously, maybe 2-3 days after you've started working on a really sad grey wall, and then it turns into this thing that almost is beyond imaginable. It's just like people are bursting with this kind of excited energy that maybe they don't know quite what to do with it because it's such a kind of shocking transformation. But at the same time, it was so planned through and they saw it come together. Yeah, it's interesting. And I think it helps bring community together as well. Just the way it kind of opens up that conversations and engagement and things like that. It's really interesting.
Not all people have the same emotion when they see it, or also we have different emotions from the beginning of when the mural is created. And then when you're letting it soaking in the space, you have some time to adapt and process. Like when we got downstairs and we saw the mural again and we're like, oh yeah, that's true. We have this mural. And it changed completely a space. And every time you have different emotions from the beginning of the process till the end. And then after.
It reminds me of when I used to dye my hair different colours all the time. And then you catch a sight of yourself and you're like, oh yes, I'm blue haired now. Just that kind of, I guess it's because it's so personal. It's like it becomes a part of your being, which I guess hair does.
It can also create a thread in the space, really connect rooms together. What we did here, we created it in the hallway. So it's connecting the entrance, the kitchen, and all the other rooms. So it's using all the surrounding colors.
I guess it gives fresh inspiration as well, because already yesterday you were like, let's paint the ladder that we're working on to match the mural.
Yeah, I wanted to paint everything.
As soon as you got a brush in your hand, it's like, what can I paint?
Do you have any project that you're particularly proud of and that really transformed a client life?
Yeah, I mean, the first one that springs to mind is the basketball court that I painted for Writtle College University in Essex. And yeah, I mean, I think I've always designed for large spaces, but to design for something that's the biggest space ever in my mind, and also for it to be something that's interacted with and kind of has to responded to the energy of the sport of basketball, but also as in keeping with my design, and then thinking about what colours evoked this really vibrant, and also how the things interacted to create flow. But also I was kind of sticking to rigid lines because it was in such a kind of grid formation. So it was an interesting challenge to kind of have all these aspects to think about and create something that was definitely going to be interacted with regularly. And I think that kind of then informed a lot of my processes going forward, thinking, oh, you've really got to take into consideration the space and its use and how people interact with it. There's another interesting project where my design process kind of was birthed, which was, I think, about 5 years ago on a big exterior warehouse for a building called Bloom Building in Liverpool. Again, it was a very large scale piece, and I kind of was feeling very restricted by working to like a laptop, iPad sized. I think that's when I realised I needed to have something tangible and tactile that I could play with, that could kind of inform the design that helped create the sense of flow that I'm passionate about in keeping with all my mural work.
So while you're soaking in like the story or the architectural features, you also want to create something unique and innovative and that is truly you. And how is your typical process when you work with clients?
It has taken a pattern now, which is really nice. So quite often we'll just have a conversation and they talk about kind of branding ideas or kind of themes they want to get across. And then from this conversation, I'm almost soaking in what I can understand about who they are and their brand and what kind of things they're into. From there, I always go away and make a kind of paper cut collage. I've got a lovely stack of lovely textured papers that I work with. And for me, this is like a really lovely process of kind of thinking about what they've said and kind of thinking of motifs and shapes and creating kind of A3 sized collages, which in themselves I don't kind of enjoy, but it's good to get all your ideas out on paper and kind of experiment with layouts. And sometimes the colours are a little bit off, but that's quite interesting because you might see two colours together that you wouldn't normally put together, but it creates this fun energy. And then from there, I kind of work in a mock-up sense of kind of imposing the collage design onto a picture of their space. Then it's just like colour playtime and just like dragging and dropping colours.
Dabbling with colours.
Days. Then there's a few back and forths and they're like, no, yes. And then it kind of just becomes quite simple from that mock-up to reality. And that's when the kind of design install process begins.
Original design to reality, sometimes it's not matching completely and you have to just use your space. Turns out that the ceiling was a bit more deep than what we had, even though we took the measurements.
Yeah, it's confusing. They never, I think 100% of the time, they're never the same size. So there's always an element of improvisation. Yeah. But that's quite nice. And I think because my designs are so abstract and freeing and, you know, it works that they kind of, but it's not, I think it's nice that you get to a space and then you rework.
You let yourself express and not like you're not stuck in
restricted by this. Yeah.
You were saying that also colors kind of talk to you. So if you don't feel any emotion at all with one particular color, you're just going to discard it and you want to trying another color. And
color's really funny. I think sometimes I enjoy the difficult nature of a colour sometimes and trying to incorporate it to challenge myself, which is something I did on the last project I did, kind of using more muted tones. And I find green's quite hard to work with. But sometimes I enjoy the kind of challenge of like trying to piece together this mixture of colours. And because I very much focus on intuitive use of colour, I don't kind of be steered by anything that's researched. Kind of like, what feels good? And I do have set colours that I'm genuinely drawn to, like orange, coral, pinky, red, orange, perfect mixture between that. is one of my favorites. The electric blue color, always my favorite.
To have a little pop.
Yeah. And like aqua greens, there's something about those three that always kind of get in my work. But yeah, true greens and lilacs I find quite challenging for some reason. Sometimes I'm like, I want the challenge of trying to mix these together.
For me, I love using lilac on my clothes, for example. But when I want to design, I'm not like, it's not the color I will think. And I think I did one project when I tried the lilac, and I was like, wow, I didn't think about this color before because I didn't feel very comfortable with it. But maybe I can also try to go out my comfort zone. Yeah. Even when you're used to fall colors, sometimes you just challenge yourself.
Yeah. Why do we do this?
You said you have colors that you're really fond of. Do you have like a recurring shapes that we can find in Molly Mural signature style?
Yeah, for a long time it was the cheese plant leaf, always made a feature. But then my cheese plant at home died and I felt quite guilty. So then my source of inspiration was no longer there. And then recently, I mean, I love putting a circle in. I think it gives it that something very calming about that.
Soft.
Yeah, and half circles. At the moment, I love making a little tower of circle, half circle. And so they're kind of almost growing. I mean, I love all botanical forms and shapes. I think it's really nice to put organic shapes in with jarring shapes because it creates
like a dynamism,
satisfying. Like it's, yeah, and it's dynamic.
Yeah, because sometimes your eye, they are drawn to one specific area that is very dynamic, and then you have kind of this flow of relaxing, dynamic, kind of a river of different emotions. Yeah. Do you think that there is a perfect color combination that you use?
I think recently I was actually thinking maybe I'm going to just create a palette that I use every time. But maybe that's going to be too restricting because quite often you're working with a client and they have a specific brand color. And also there's a project I'm doing at the moment where I've incorporated black, which is really tricky, but it's interesting because it makes the colors feel so different. There's part of me that just wants to drag and drop a different color on top and try and stick with it and try and, I guess, like we said, the challenge. But I don't know with colour combinations. They're just always changing. I guess maybe they're always changing because my mood's always changing. Depends how I'm feeling at the time. But yeah, it's an ever-flowing, ever-changing relationship I have with colour.
And I think the connection with colour and also with the people you're working with, because for me, when I'm working with clients, I always have this first talk with them. And then I'm analysing their life, their needs, traits of character, functionality, the space in itself. And then from this, emotions associate with colors. Like, oh, okay, I think I can see yourself with this color.
I think you're right. There's so many things that impact it that maybe I don't invest enough thought in. Well, I mean, it's that subconscious feeling of like actually you're involving 10 different aspects of like how the lighting, the building, the personality, the brand. And then you're just kind of processing it all and you're like, blue.
Yeah, and also you said like using black on a background, it makes the other color pop.
Yeah, it definitely makes it jarring. I think for the particular piece where I'm going to use black, it makes a lot of sense because of the building and the kind of heritage and history behind the building. And it's had a lot of thought behind it.
Yeah, you said that it was a former letterpress.
This is one that's going to be installed next year. And it's been a long process of kind of research and kind of really understanding what the building used to be. And it was, this old letterpress. And the building is inspired by the typesetters trays that are kind of these wooden little boxes. So the design has taken into consideration that, which I guess for me has been the challenge because my work generally has so much flow and it isn't restricted. But then in the sense that often my murals fill a space that is restricted. There's almost lots of small restricted spaces, lots of small murals that have made up this bigger kind of letterpress-esque themed typesetter tray murals within lots of pockets.
Also, you're not coming up with the perfect design at first. It's always an evolution.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you're starting with a specific color palette and then the color palette is changing or the shapes are changing. So it's kind of a trial and error.
Yeah, I think I'm trying to really believe in that process a little bit more. And sometimes I can feel so pressured to reach the end goal and you scurry through those stages that are really important and taking the thinking time. So I'm really trying to put a lot more effort into taking less pressure off kind of the end result and focusing more on the process. And that's making really interesting outcomes. We also mentioned yesterday about when you're trying to get colours right and you're putting loads of pressure on yourself, it just doesn't work. For some reason, you have to be in this kind of relaxed state and kind of once you start overthinking colours, it just goes dreadfully wrong.
Yeah, you can't connect to yourself when you put so much pressure because it's building a wall and then you're not really able to listen. So most of the time I just go on a stroll, or my ideas can come when I'm sleeping or when I'm doing sport. And then I always have a notebook.
Yeah, ideas come when you least expect them.
Yeah.
Annoyingly.
And when you really need them, nothing.
Yeah.
You're always very disappointed in yourself and just like, very angry.
We're so harsh on ourselves.
We have to trust ourselves more. And when there is too much pressure, just learn to let it go and say, okay, I'm going to just take a break. And we'll come back after.
More of that.
Sometimes your process is completely different. When we painted the mural, you put the tape, and also you're doing freehands, like the perfect pair of Molly can draw a perfect circle by hand without any tape. I'm just blown away by this.
You were shocked. You're like stroking it like, wow.
Every time I look at it, I'm like, wow, this is a perfect circle.
I'll take that. It's a good badge.
That was a very nice process also for me because I'm used to paint shapes with tape, and it was the first time that I did something freehand. It's quite liberating.
Yeah. It's mesmerizing.
Yeah. Just like,
it's the mural dance.
Before I was so worried. I didn't feel comfortable doing anything freehand because I was always worried of getting it wrong. But you can still correct it if you don't like it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you can always carve in with the other colours.
Yeah.
It's just ongoing.
Yeah. When we started painting, for example, we had one circle and then you could correct it quite easily. We removed and have changed places, so you can still correct it very easily. It removes the pressure, the pressure you have on your thumb. Do you have any tips for listeners to incorporate murals into their home?
I mean, I'm really into the roof now. We've done a roof. I think you could just have a mural anywhere. Floor, wall, roof, it all works. Go for it. Personally, in my own spaces, when I've lived in different places, like an alcove is my go-to for like a perfect little mural. Sometimes there'll be a setback, maybe where a fireplace was, or there's always that little corner that's some reason set back. I think they make perfect little kind of framed areas. Yeah, cozy corners for murals. Something where it can feel framed and contained is a really nice way of adding a bit of a mural.
And then you have some plants around, and you're just like, like little cocoon. It's creating kind of a little cozy oasis.
Yeah, bringing the outside in.
When you're designing the mural and when you're painting, sometimes the lighting as such also a big impact. Would you say that you have some tips to consider the lighting first?
It's tricky because all the different coloured lights and like natural light lamps all affect the colours of the mural.
Yeah.
It's funny because I guess I often go into people's houses, kind of process their spaces, transform them and leave. But in my own home, I actually go quite minimal. And actually, it's interesting because my studio space is full of murals and colour. But then I like to go home to a more calm, serene space. So actually, having thought about my own home, it's not something that I consider that much. But when I'm creating something for somebody else, I find it a lot easier. So thinking about my own spaces and how I transform them is hard. But
yeah, it's always hard when you're doing it for yourself because you try to think about yourself, and it's harder because when you see someone, you already have an idea of who this person is or the major trait of personality of this person. Like, I think I can feel what would work. What's great is also people experiment with DIY murals. Do you have any tips for that?
I think it's great to start on a garden wall. Last summer, I ran mural workshops, and it was great because people came and we learnt some techniques and tricks, and then people went home and some people actually transformed these pieces into garden murals, which was so nice to see. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's almost informed by the tools. Like you can get good masking tape that doesn't pull off the wall and maybe pick 3 colours is a really good place to start. So you're not going too far. Maybe you've already got some colours around that you've kind of incorporated maybe in the bathroom or somewhere already, which kind of will help keep it in keeping. I think just starting to think about maybe carving out some kind of rigid shapes with tape. And then maybe you want to kind of take inspiration from the plants or things that you've got at home. That you could weave in. And I think I quite like it when things curl around the edges of walls. And so maybe you've got an alcove and then it's nice that kind of plants come in at the edges and then in the middle you've kind of got a more rigid shape. Curves are good, but they're quite tricky to create.
Yeah. For me, I always like to mix the round shapes and straight shapes because it's the balance of feminine energy and masculine energy, and it's not unbalanced. Yeah, inspiration can also come from the surrounding space. You were saying like for the former letterpress building that you took inspiration in the squares that you could see on the facade.
Yeah.
And in fact, maybe sitting and like soaking in your space, that's where also inspiration comes to me. I'm sitting on my sofa, I'm looking at like the surrounding space, and I'm like, oh, I like this shape. Yeah. I have a lamp, like gives me a lot of inspiration because it's very colorful and very curvy, and I love curves.
I think you're right. And kind of when you get into that mindset, you then start seeing shapes and everything.
Yeah.
And there's like little bits and you're like, oh, that kind of pattern would look really cool, really big. And even when you look out of the windows of places, sometimes it's nice when I do site visits, they've got beautiful skyscapes and you can kind of pick out fun features. And for me, I really like the way that nature kind of will grow amongst urban environments, and that kind of juxtaposition of those I find really inspiring.
And do you have any simple techniques or tools that you would recommend?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, you don't need much to create a mural. I think I always go and get like good tape. Good masking tape is a good way to start, because if you get masking tape that's really sticky, you'll end up maybe peeling half of your wall off when you take it off. You need to make sure the paint's dry before you put tape on top. But generally, like most hardware stores will have like a really nice tape. And then I really enjoy using the bulb head brushes. Again, you can get those in most places. You can get quite a lot of paint on those and they get a really nice smooth line. And then, yeah, you really don't need much. I mean, masking tape and a really good paintbrush just gets you by. Yeah, I suppose scaling up is the tricky thing, I guess. But I kind of use pencil, chalk. And then when I feel like I'm getting there, I'll maybe put like a paint pen and go over the top where I commit. The commitment is the bit where you get it right, because you put the pressure like, okay, this is the bit where we're going to draw a pen all over the wall.
If you have your pen drawn, you're like, okay, this is it.
I think the other thing is it's really nice to kind of think of your body as the tool as well. Kind of you're really like moving around, carving up the wall and like almost using your arm as a kind of pivot point to get a good circle.
Yeah.
It's a dance.
We're arriving at the end of our episode. Do you have any Instagram account and a website where our listeners can contact you?
My Instagram handle is Molly Mural, and you can find me at mollymural.com.
Your website and your Instagram account are just so colorful and joyful. That's how we connected.
Yeah.
Because we
definitely.
We spoke the same language.
I get this.
Thank you very much, Molly, for being a guest on this podcast.
Thank you.
And also collaborating with me on this project. I think it was a great collaboration.
It's been really good. And there's more to come.
Thank you to our listeners to be here. And we'll see you on the next episode. Bye. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, don't hesitate to subscribe, rate, or review on the different listening platforms. To say hello and get all the latest from me, you can follow me on Instagram at rainbow.shaker. And if you want to check out my services, you can go to my website www.rainbowshaker.com. Thanks again, and I wish you all a very colorful day. See you next time!